Welcome, everyone. I'm Jan Holland, and today I'd love to introduce you to Sam Kitchen, who's the Principal Advisor and Director of Secured Wealth Advice. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Jan. I'm glad to be here.
Great. So we're going to talk about how you can work through your divorce in the financial setting today. So I'm just going to read out a bit about Sam. Sam Kitchen is the Principal Advisor and Director of Secured Wealth Advice. After spending many years working in some of Australia's top accounting firms, Sam decided that he wanted to use his expertise to make a difference in the lives of ordinary Australians. With that in mind, Secured Wealth Advice was established in 2016. Sam is one of a generation of financial professionals that believe the true value of their product is measured by their clients' enhanced quality of life. Sam is a certified public accountant and financial planning specialist who holds a Bachelor of Commerce, a Bachelor of Arts, and a graduate diploma in financial planning. Sam has also been awarded the Association of Financial Advisors New South Wales Award for Education in Financial Advice. Sam spends his free time being a chef and taxi driver for his children. He enjoys lifesaving at Queenscliff and running marathons. That's very impressive, Sam. We had a conversation before about there being 3 stages in the divorce process and in what you think are the financial stages in the divorce process. And the 3 stages you cited were when you know the relationship has ended, the negotiation, and then freedom. And so would you like to talk about the first stage, when you know the relationship has ended, and what financial priorities should you have at that stage?
Yes, Jan, this initial stage, as you said, is when you know the relationship has ended, and it can be often the most fraught, often surprising and emotionally challenging part of the process. But it's also crucial that we recognize those financial priorities, and they can be divided into 2 points. The first part is to clarify, and then the second part is to secure. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by clarify, it's to understand exactly what you've got in terms of credit cards, super funds, bank accounts, mortgage, and by doing that, and what that actually looks like is to get those statements, perhaps going back 6 months to a year. And what I've learned and what we've experienced is that it's important not to rely on that, on your former spouse or an indirect party to get that information. So in other words, contact that provider and get that access directly. The second step is, where possible, stop the joint credit cards in particular. That's important because often one party will go and perhaps use that money or go and spend that money. And it's important that that is stopped. You can actually have it so that the 2 of you have to sign off on major purchases, and perhaps advise the bank accordingly. Say, you might go to the bank and say, look, anything over $5,000 in a day needs to be signed off in a joint way. Right. But what I'd really advise is to contact your accountant or financial advisor and ask them to provide you perhaps with a checklist of those things that you might need to secure and clarify.
Yes, that's a great idea, I think, to have a checklist, because again, when you're emotionally fraught, you're not thinking very clearly. So just to be able to tick off on a checklist is really a good idea. Thank you. And then the second stage you mentioned is the negotiation stage. So do you want to talk about that and what the priorities are for that stage?
Thanks, Jan. So in this stage, this is past that, that immediate point of where the marriage has ended or the relationship has ended. This is more almost like a business negotiation. And so this is where we're really understanding there's 3 points we're wanting to dig into as a financial priority. The first leg is to understand each aspects of the finance. The second being be clear with your preferred financial outcome. And then finally, once that's done, or once that's negotiated, we need to solidify that with what's called a binding financial agreement. Right. So what do I mean to each of those points? The first point, by understanding your finances deeply, what it means is, do you understand the difference between a defined benefit super fund or an accumulation super fund? Because if we're not understanding what that looks like, or what that is to you, we're not making informed choices. So we're perhaps giving away something that we don't truly understand. So that's where perhaps a professional opinion would come into play. The second aspect is, and I see this come up time and time again with negotiation stage, Jan, is that just be clear with what your preferred financial outcome is. This isn't an emotional negotiation. It's not one where we're trying to create a win-win. And we've got to have that mindset going into it. So be clear on that, and then perhaps think of an alternative to that arrangement that we can use. And by doing that and having that preferred financial outcome, we'll have more certainty for you. And at the final stage, that's when we actually lock it in to the court for a binding financial agreement.
Right. And what did you mean by have an alternative? You said something about know what you want, but also have an alternative.
So what? It's actually a bit of a legal term, or I think negotiators use this in professional context, but they talk about a best alternative negotiated agreement, or a BATNA. And this is a scenario where I might want, say, the house and half the super fund in a negotiation.
Right.
But there might be a best alternative negotiation to that. That might be, let's have the house and perhaps the former partner pays me dividends from the business over the course of 5 years.
Right.
So you can see how, in thinking of financial outcomes in a negotiation phase, we're actually thinking of what other alternative, if I wasn't to get my number one priority, is there another alternative that would satisfy me? And am I clear on that?
That's probably a good idea as well, because I think sometimes our emotions get the better of us, and we think it's either my way or the highway. And so, I think in your mind, you almost have to be ready to have an alternative, because that's probably the realistic way to go.
I think you're exactly right. And that brings into that question around emotion and why we aim as financial professionals to separate the emotion and the objective financial reality. And the sooner you can do that, and perhaps that's where you come into it, Jan, the better financial outcome for everyone, because you'll save on, protracted legal debates. You'll have more certainty for which to get on to with your life, and put things behind you, so to speak. And money's a really good way to do that.
Yes, that's true. No, it's very interesting, because just at a time when you need to be thinking really clearly, your emotions get the better of you. But it's really important to be able to focus, and especially when the decisions that you make the rest of your life depend on it, especially in finances, because it does affect the freedom that you have now and later on.
Oh, you're exactly right. And sadly, I've been doing this a long time, and I see those things interweave too often, where emotion does come into play with people's money, and it's only going to lead to regret later.
Yes, that's true.
So it's something to be aware of, and it's definitely it's something we can rectify as well.
Great. And then the third stage is freedom. It's interesting that you said that, but I like it. The fact that you do have freedom after going through all of this. So the third stage is freedom. So would you like to talk about that, and what are the financial priorities for that stage?
Oh, this is clearly my favorite part, working with clients in the sense that this is the point, and it can be several months or even years down the track from the initial stage we talked about, this is the part where you get to work on your world. Like, so that, again, breaking into three parts, this is where we dream big, you know, think about those aspirations. Do I want to travel the world? Do I need a place to live? Or where would that be? The second aspect of the freedom stage, as we call it, is we'd like to set annual milestones. So once we've got that aspiration, that dream big, you know, I want to travel the world, for example. What money do I need to make that happen? Do I, you know, do I need to arrange my will appropriately, and so forth? So this is exciting. And then finally, what I also, you know, from my experience is there is often a new relationship at this point. And so this is where we like to ensure your assets are protected so that future relationships don't come under the scrutiny of what you've just gone through.
Yes. Oh, that's a great idea. And then, Sam, what are the biggest mistakes you see in newly separated and divorced clients in terms of finances?
Yeah. It's going back to what we were talking about earlier, Jan. I think that is, try if you can, and we're not robots, we're human beings, and we do tend to run on emotions at times, especially going through a divorce. And so I'm just cautioning people rather than saying that this is something, you know, it's a dilemma rather than a solution. But what I find people do is they treat money emotionally. So what I mean by that is they might go and overspend, they might go and shop, or they might be wanting to get the other partner back and throw money at that relationship. And I think, as we said before, there is an issue where these are decisions that we often regret later. So when I talk to divorcees who've been through divorce, say 10 years later, they often regret some of those financial decisions they took. So the way we like to sort of step through that process is to ensure that they're talking to someone like you, Jan, in sorting through those emotional you know, traumas, so that they can actually make these objective decisions.
Oh, that's great. And I think you probably mentioned it, but how do you protect yourself financially if you repartner?
Oh, look, one particular way is to obviously get a binding financial agreement. So that's, you know, in Hollywood, they call it a prenuptial. That's something you can do, and that's something, you know, very secure. Other ways I see clients do it is perhaps they're mindful of finding someone with similar type financial background or similar type experience, where they're not, you know, they're not giving away their assets on an unequal basis. So there's ways and means. You can talk to your financial advisor or accountant where we can talk through that in more detail if you like.
Right. Okay. Lovely. And often you will get a settlement where the one partner gets the house and the other the business and or the super. So is there any preference there, and why would there be a preference?
Again, this is why at this stage, you know, this would be going back to that negotiation phase. Talk to the professional, understand exactly the assets involved. So what I mean by that is, can you, once you've spoken to your accountant or financial planner, can you yourself go and explain that to someone else? That's how I test clients on their level of financial acumen. But what can happen here is, I've seen a client where perhaps they've settled on the house and the business has been given to the former husband, and what happened there was that business was actually going through a bad year during that divorce settlement. So the business was dramatically undervalued. So in that circumstance, I wonder whether, had it been properly informed and properly understood, maybe the business might have been kept in the asset pool during the settlement a little bit more concisely, if you like. So which is better and why? My answering that question, it really depends. but I just want everyone to take away the idea of understanding before making any decisions.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think often the family home pulls at those emotional heartstrings. And I think particularly for women, because they're probably, I mean, I know I'm making a generalization here, but they're probably more family oriented. And I just think that to stay in the family home is often really important. But, you know, people might do that at the expense of having more financial freedom later on in their life. So I guess there are considerations as well, that it's very hard to take away those emotions, especially, you know, when you've brought up a family in that house or something like that. But sometimes you have to let those emotions go and make very clear decisions about what's best for my long-term life.
Oh, I think that's a great point, Jan. Or at the very least, be fully informed. You know, that idea that, okay, this lady, this example, the client knew there was a business there, but was she fully informed by an expert about that business? You know, that meant she could make those decisions that you're talking about, but perhaps the very best information. That's my job in these matters goes to, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think you've probably covered them, but I will just, you know, as a summary, what would you say are the top financial things that someone should do when they're getting divorced? I think you've covered it very well, but we'll just make this a nice summary.
Yes. So in summary, the top 5 things that, you know, we recommend someone do during divorce or whilst getting divorced is, and again, I'm talking to you, and so this is really relevant, but it's really look after yourself first. If you have a good headspace to make good decisions, then it'll really help you going forward. So just like they put the oxygen masks on yourself first in a plane, I think that's what you must do. That would be my first tip. So the second step we talked about was that idea of clarifying and securing those assets so that you're 100% clear. And then don't rely on that former spouse. I see that all too often about maybe there's one partner that's looked after the money, and during particularly that early stage of a divorce, both parties will rely on that information, and that's a definite no. So the tip there is to go to a third party. That's number 2. The third point is keep paying the family costs. I often see one party might stop school fees for the children, and what happens there is it gets more complex and difficult, and once that happens, legal fees start to add up very quickly. So it's important that those, that you know, the day-to-days kept going.
Yes.
Sorry, Jan, you're about to say something. I interrupted.
No, I wasn't. I was just writing and agreeing.
Yeah. The other point is, don't pay for holidays for the former spouse, or don't necessarily rush out to support them. Just be very careful with those monies. The fourth point is, where possible, I find it best to defer big financial decisions. So what I mean by that is, if you're going to rush out and buy a house or something of that nature, perhaps just give yourself the breathing space to work through the emotional issues, and then make the decision. I've seen too many people make mistakes financially by not giving themselves the permission to take the time and think about the next steps in their lives. So that's number 4. And then the final and fifth, and if there's one takeaway from today, I think focus on the future with you. So, what do you want to do? My experience is it is an opportunity to think about your life and to dream big and to really focus on that next phase in what is an exciting time, really. Yeah. So I hope that's 5 takeaways that from our experience we see with clients working with separated and divorced clients that we see.
That's fantastic, Sam. Thank you. I love the last one about focusing on you and dream big, because oftentimes going through a divorce, you tend to focus on all the things that you have lost. But if you can actually go through this process and, okay, you may not have had what you had before, but if you can start to think big, to dream big, and start following those dreams. And then, of course, with support, the right support and professional advice and so on, you can make those dreams come true. So thank you so much, Sam. I think that the audience would have found this so helpful. And also, if people want to find out more about you, how can they do that?
Oh, look, my personal email is sam@securedwealth.com.au, and simply through that email they can reach out, and as they your audience, Jan, is part of your network, that there's no expense for that initial meeting. If they'd like to call me on the phone or Zoom, or indeed come in and have a cup of coffee, that our aim is just to help people. And I think if I can offer that initial meeting and perhaps answer the questions that I know I went through a divorce, and I wish I had those questions answered when I was going through such a difficult stage. So I'd be glad to offer.
I didn't even seek financial advice. That's one of the biggest regrets I have. I made really poor financial decisions. So thank you so much. And people will put that information on the page. Thanks again, Sam.
Thanks, Jan. Cheers.